They will never admit it, but everyone around you is playing a game. Some play poorly, exposing their intentions like fools. Others play quietly, pretending innocence while they maneuver. And then there are the rare few who understand the truth. Power belongs not to the strongest, but to the one who shapes perception, controls narrative, and strikes long before the enemy even notices a threat. I have watched men lose kingdoms not because their enemies were stronger, but because they failed to understand the battlefield of the mind. Today, I will reveal the psychological weapons your adversaries never see coming, tools of influence disguised as subtlety, tactics invisible to the untrained, and strategies that allow you to determine outcomes while others still believe they are acting freely. If you wish to win without exhausting yourself, if you wish to rise while others sleep, you must learn to master the shadows where real power is forged. 1. The weapon of controlled silence. Silence is one of the most underestimated tools in human interaction. Most people treat silence as an empty space, something awkward, something to avoid, something that must be filled with noise. That mistake reveals far more about them than they realize. They speak to escape discomfort. They speak to convince themselves they are in control. They speak because they fear what might happen if they don't. But a strategic mind sees silence for what it truly is: a pressure chamber, a psychological spotlight, and a form of influence that works without force. Controlled silence is not passive. It is an intentional act that reshapes the dynamics of any conversation. When you choose silence deliberately, you shift the emotional weight onto the other person. Human beings are programmed to interpret silence as judgment, uncertainty, superiority, or hidden knowledge depending on their own insecurities. When you stay quiet, they begin projecting their own fears onto the blank canvas you've created. They wonder what you're thinking. They wonder whether they've said something wrong. They wonder whether you know more than they do. Their mind becomes your instrument, and they do the work for you. Observe an unstrategic man. He cannot tolerate silence for even a moment. He blurts out explanations, overjustifies his decisions, reveals intentions prematurely, and gives away his emotional state without being asked. His fear of uncomfortable silence exposes his weakness. He tries to dominate the room with words, but in doing so, he reveals the limits of his understanding. He leaks information. He surrenders initiative. He gives the other person everything they need to understand, predict, and control him. A strategic man operates differently. He understands that silence creates questions that others rush to answer on their own. When he remains quiet, people interpret his silence according to their own psychology. The insecure person assumes he disagrees. The arrogant person assumes he is impressed. The guilty person assumes he knows something. Every individual exposes themselves, not because he demanded it, but because the silence forced their mind to speak louder than their mouth. Controlled silence builds authority. People associate silence with confidence because only someone who feels in control can resist the urge to prove themselves. Leaders who speak less are perceived as wiser. Negotiators who pause before responding are seen as calculating. Individuals who refuse to react impulsively gain an aura of power. When you're silent, others wonder what calculations you're making. When you speak too quickly, they know exactly how to place you. Silence also manipulates pace. In conflict, conversations naturally accelerate. Emotions rise, voices clash. People rush to defend themselves, but the one who controls silence slows the entire interaction down. Your calm, deliberate pauses disrupt the momentum of the other person's emotional storm. They expect resistance or panic. Instead, they meet stillness. The contrast exposes their agitation while elevating your composure. Every moment of silence gives you time to think, observe, and choose your response with precision rather than instinct. It turns the interaction into your terrain. Controlled silence is equally powerful in negotiation. If someone makes an offer and you respond with immediate acceptance or immediate refusal, you reveal eagerness or discomfort. If you pause, if you let silence settle, they begin doubting their position. They assume they miscalculated. They adjust their offer. They soften their demands. They negotiate against themselves. This does not require aggression. It requires restraint. Silence also reveals truth. When you say nothing, people rush to fill the void with their own explanations. If you suspect someone is hiding information, remain quiet. The average person cannot endure the tension and will keep talking, often stumbling into details they never planned to disclose. They will rationalize, justify, and over-explain, believing they are clarifying the situation when they are actually exposing the parts they tried to conceal. Silence extracts confessions that direct confrontation never would. But controlled silence must be executed with intention rather than stubbornness. It is not about refusing to speak altogether that would only make you seem detached or uninterested. It is about choosing when to speak and when not to. Speak only when your words move the situation in your favor. Speak when your voice carries weight. Speak when silence has already done the groundwork for you. Your words become more powerful the less frequently you use them. This discipline creates an aura of mystery. A person who speaks constantly reveals everything about themselves, their values, emotions, fears, and expectations. A person who speaks selectively becomes unpredictable. Others cannot easily define you. They cannot map your emotional patterns. They cannot determine the limits of your intelligence or your intentions. And in the absence of clarity, they assume depth. Humans fear the unknown, respect the unknown, and project strength onto the unknown. Silence makes you the unknown. Controlled silence also strengthens your internal world. It forces you to think before you respond. It protects you from emotional manipulation because you are no longer reacting to provocations. It trains you to observe others rather than rushing to be observed. It transforms you from a participant into an analyst. In silence, you see details that others overlook: the tremor in a voice, the shift in posture, the hesitation before a lie. Words distract people from these signals. Silence amplifies them. To master this weapon, you must first master yourself. You must overcome the instinct to fill quiet gaps. You must resist the urge to defend every accusation or explain every thought. You must let others reveal themselves instead of volunteering unnecessary information. Controlled silence requires confidence, not loud confidence, but the quiet confidence of someone who is not desperate to be understood or validated. When you understand silence, you understand influence. When you control silence, you control atmosphere. And when you control atmosphere, you shape outcomes long before a single word is spoken. 2. The weapon of predictability breaking. Human beings find comfort in patterns. They rely on them to navigate relationships, to judge intentions, and to anticipate future behavior. When someone becomes predictable, people stop paying attention to them because they believe they already understand who that person is and how they will act. Predictability makes you easy to read, easy to plan around, and easy to manage. But when you break predictability subtly, deliberately, and at the right moments, you disrupt the mental models people build about you. In doing so, you introduce uncertainty into their calculations, which shifts power in your direction. Predictability breaking is not chaos. Chaos is foolishness, erratic behavior that confuses even you. Chaos weakens authority because it signals instability and lack of self-control. Predictability breaking is something entirely different. It is a controlled alteration of your patterns to make others question their assumptions. It is intentional uncertainty, not reckless inconsistency. The purpose is not to appear unstable, but to appear undefinable. Most people cling to routines because routines make them feel safe. Their words follow the same rhythm. Their emotional responses never change. Their habits, preferences, and opinions rarely shift. Over time, people around them construct a simple psychological blueprint. This person will always react this way. Once that blueprint exists, others can influence them easily. They know what to expect. They know what provokes, what comforts, what persuades, and what unravels. Predictability hands over power without resistance. A strategic mind refuses to be reduced to a blueprint. To avoid becoming predictable, you must learn to occasionally disrupt your own patterns. Notice the word occasionally. Predictability breaking is effective precisely because it is not constant. If you behave unpredictably all the time, no one will trust you, and your influence will collapse. But if you shift your behavior just enough to create uncertainty, always with rationale, always with timing, people begin to tread carefully around you. They think twice before assuming they understand your intentions. For example, consider your emotional reactions. If you are always calm, people label you as passive. Eventually, they will feel safe pushing you, challenging you, or dismissing you. But if, once in a while, you respond with firm resistance or unexpected decisiveness, you force them to reevaluate their assumptions. They realize they misjudged the range of your temperament. You have introduced a new variable into their calculations. They will approach you with greater respect, not because you are aggressive, but because you are not confined to the emotional pattern they assigned you. The same applies in conversation. If you always speak quickly, people expect immediacy and may try to trap you with rapid questions. But if you suddenly become measured, pausing before answering, you shift the balance. They now have to adjust to your pace. The predictability they relied on disappears, forcing them to rethink how to interact with you. A simple change in rhythm can redefine the entire dynamic between you and the other person. Breaking predictability also prevents people from weaponizing your behavior against you. When someone knows exactly how you will react, they can manipulate situations to trigger the response they want. But if your reactions vary thoughtfully, they lose that leverage. They cannot stage outcomes as easily because the result is no longer a guarantee. This makes you significantly harder to manage, corner, or pressure. They must consider multiple possibilities, each requiring energy and caution, while you maintain the advantage of surprise. One of the most effective uses of predictability breaking is in setting boundaries. If you always tolerate disrespect, people continue testing you. If you suddenly enforce a boundary with clarity and firmness, they are startled. Not alarmed in a harmful sense, just confronted with a version of you they did not anticipate. This disruption forces them to reconsider the way they treat you. You have shown them that the old rules no longer apply. You have signaled that you are not bound by the expectations they created for you. Predictability breaking also protects your strategic intentions. If you always show enthusiasm for your goals, others know exactly where your ambitions lie. They may attempt to compete, undermine, or imitate you. But if you occasionally downplay your interests or shift your visible focus, you create ambiguity. You become harder to monitor. Your true intentions remain concealed behind a fog of possibility. This gives you the freedom to maneuver without interference, while others waste time deciphering what you are really planning. This weapon also enhances your charisma. People are naturally drawn to those who cannot be easily defined. Predictability creates boredom. Slight unpredictability, not confusion, not instability, but subtle variation creates intrigue. It sparks curiosity. It forces people to pay closer attention. The mind becomes alert in the presence of novelty. When you alter your patterns with intention, you become someone others watch more closely, not because they fear you, but because they want to understand you. This elevated attention increases your influence because people place greater psychological value on those who stand out from the ordinary. However, predictability breaking requires self-awareness. You must know your current patterns before you can disrupt them. Observe how you typically respond, how you typically speak, how you typically behave in conflict, and how you typically show approval or disapproval. Once you understand your habits, you can identify which moments need variation. The variation must be subtle, never excessive. Sudden extremes create distrust. Thoughtful shifts create respect. The ultimate purpose of predictability breaking is not to confuse others, but to prevent them from simplifying you. A simplified person is an easily controlled person. A person who introduces subtle unpredictability retains psychological depth. That depth becomes a shield protecting you from manipulation, preserving your autonomy, and keeping others from assuming they can predict or dictate your behavior. A predictable man is readable. A readable man is manageable. And a manageable man cannot shape the world around him. When you break predictability with intention, you step outside the mental boxes others create. You become a moving target in a world built for static ones. 3. The weapon of selective vulnerability. Most people misunderstand vulnerability. They think it means exposing their entire emotional world, confessing their fears, or offering transparency without limits. They imagine that vulnerability builds connection because it makes them appear authentic. But unfiltered vulnerability does not create strength. It creates exposure. It hands people a map of your sensitivities, your insecurities, and the exact pressure points that can be used against you. True vulnerability, strategic vulnerability, is something entirely different. It is not about revealing everything. It is about revealing just enough to guide perception while keeping the core of your power intact. Selective vulnerability is a weapon because it disarms others without ever weakening you. When done correctly, it blends sincerity with intention. It lets people lower their guard, not because you manipulated them, but because you allowed them to see a carefully chosen part of your humanity. The key word is chosen. You decide what to show, when to show it, and why. You share only what strengthens your position rather than diminishing it. In human interaction, people instinctively distrust those who appear too perfect or too strong. Total invulnerability triggers suspicion. People wonder what you're hiding. They assume you are emotionally distant or calculating. They feel they cannot relate to you. But if you reveal a small imperfection, something relatable, something harmless, something that frames you as human rather than mechanical, you immediately reshape the emotional terrain of the interaction. People feel closer to you because vulnerability signals openness. They interpret it as trust. And when someone feels you trust them, they often reciprocate with an even greater level of openness. The brilliance of selective vulnerability is that the openness feels mutual, but the risk is not. You control the narrative. You choose the vulnerability that costs you nothing, an old struggle you've already resolved, a mistake that no longer has power over you, a limitation that makes you relatable rather than weak. This kind of vulnerability humanizes you without diminishing your influence. It's the emotional equivalent of showing a scratch on an armor so polished that no one questions its strength. There is another layer to selective vulnerability. It redirects attention. When you reveal a small, intentional weakness, people stop searching for the real ones. Their curiosity is satisfied. They think they've seen the truth. They stop digging. They stop questioning. They believe they understand you, even though you've shown them only a controlled fragment. You've given them something to hold on to, but you haven't given them leverage. This is how strategic leaders throughout history maintained connection without surrendering power. They revealed enough to appear human, but never enough to risk their position. They let people see a crack, but not the foundation. They understood that people follow those they respect, but they stay loyal to those they empathize with. Selective vulnerability gives you both, but this weapon requires discernment. Vulnerability becomes destructive when used excessively or impulsively. Oversharing makes you emotionally naked in front of people who have not earned the right to see you that closely. It invites judgment. It invites exploitation. It invites misunderstanding. It transforms you from a strong presence into a person searching for acceptance or validation. True strength never begs to be understood. Selective vulnerability is the opposite of impulsive oversharing. It is measured. It is deliberate. It requires awareness of the context, the audience, and the strategic outcome you seek. It is not about hiding your humanity. It is about framing your humanity in a way that builds alliances rather than dismantling them. Consider conflict situations. If you reveal nothing, people see you as cold or defensive. They dig deeper, push harder, and escalate tension because they feel shut out. But if you show a small, controlled acknowledgement, perhaps of stress, fatigue, or frustration, you create a bridge. The tension dissolves because you've shown that you're not a stone wall. You're a person navigating difficulty. And yet, you have revealed nothing that damages your position. You've reduced the hostility without sacrificing authority. Selective vulnerability also strengthens persuasion. People are more receptive to influence when they feel emotionally aligned with the speaker. If you present yourself as flawless, they cannot relate to you. But if you reveal a small struggle, you overcame one that positions you as resilient, thoughtful, or disciplined. You create a narrative they can follow. You become a model of possibility rather than an unreachable standard. This gives your words more weight and your presence more credibility. There is another dimension. Selective vulnerability helps regulate power balance. When you reveal something small about yourself, the other person often feels compelled to share something in return, usually something deeper, more personal, and more revealing. This is not because you force them to, but because humans naturally reciprocate vulnerability. It is built into social psychology. Reciprocity is one of the strongest principles guiding human behavior. When you open one controlled door, others open entire corridors. This creates a phenomenon where the other person feels closer to you, but in reality, they have given far more than you have. You maintain the position of strength, not through dominance, but through gentle self-disclosure that guides the tone of the interaction. You become the anchor of emotional trust while revealing almost nothing that threatens your core stability. Selective vulnerability also strengthens long-term relationships, professional or personal. It creates a reputation of honesty without requiring full transparency. It builds respect while fostering connection. It allows people to see your depth without granting access to your private interior. The people who practice selective vulnerability consistently appear balanced, strong, and emotionally intelligent. They understand that real power is not in hiding everything, but in controlling what is revealed. To master selective vulnerability, you must know yourself well. You must understand what parts of your story are safe to reveal, what parts are empowering rather than disempowering, and what parts create relatability without eroding boundaries. You must learn to speak with intention rather than impulse. And above all, you must understand that the goal is not to deceive, but to avoid destabilizing yourself through reckless openness. Selective vulnerability is a shield disguised as openness. It is sincerity guided by wisdom. It is humanity refined by self-control. And when used with precision, it becomes one of the most subtle and most effective psychological weapons a person can possess. 4. The weapon of induced uncertainty. Uncertainty is one of the most powerful forces in human psychology. People crave clarity, predictability, and explanation because uncertainty triggers discomfort. It activates the part of the mind that fears losing control. When people are unsure of what is happening, unsure of how others perceive them, unsure of what the future holds, they begin to hesitate. They slow down, they overthink. And in that hesitation, in that mental fog, the strategic individual gains room to maneuver. Inducing uncertainty is not about deception or instability. It is about creating space. Space in which others pause long enough for you to understand them, reorganize the dynamic, and position yourself advantageously. Think of uncertainty as a dim light in a room. When the light is bright, everyone can move confidently, quickly, and directly. But when the light is low, people move carefully. They become cautious, their steps soften, their reactions slow, and their confidence weakens. The one who can see clearly in this dimness, the one who remains still, calm, and observant has the advantage. People tend to assume they understand more than they actually do. They form quick judgments, build narratives, and cling to them even when evidence contradicts their beliefs. Inducing uncertainty interrupts these premature conclusions. It forces them to step back and reconsider their assumptions. This is where your power begins. In the moment, they question what they previously believed to be true. One of the simplest ways to induce uncertainty is through timing. Most people respond immediately, whether in conversation, negotiation, or conflict. Immediate responses give others a sense of clarity. I understand their position. I know their emotional state. I can predict what they will do next. But when you delay your response even slightly, you interrupt their mental pattern. They begin asking questions. Are they reconsidering? Are they unhappy? Did I say something wrong? Their mind fills the silence with interpretations. And these interpretations reveal more about their insecurities than anything you could have asked directly. This is not about creating fear. It is about creating reflection. People who are forced to reflect reveal their priorities, anxieties, and the cracks in their convictions. They become more transparent precisely because they are unsure of what you are thinking. Another form of induced uncertainty comes from asking subtle, open-ended questions. Not aggressive questions, not accusatory ones. Just questions that make them re-examine their assumptions. As simple, are you certain? Or what makes you confident in that? Disrupts their internal certainty without attacking them. You are not challenging them directly, you are challenging the strength of their reasoning. In responding, they show you how much of their argument is foundation and how much is guesswork. Strategic uncertainty also involves withholding unnecessary explanations. Most people over-explain themselves because they fear being misunderstood. They want others to feel assured and comfortable, but this comfort often works against them. When you offer no immediate explanation, people begin constructing their own. Some will imagine the worst. Others will attempt to read between lines that are not there. Their projections reveal what they fear most. Their assumptions reveal what they value most. Their overthinking reveals the leverage points you are searching for. Yet, this weapon must be used responsibly. Excessive or careless uncertainty can create distrust or frustration. You are not trying to confuse people endlessly. You are trying to interrupt automatic behavior long enough to observe their real motives and reorient the dynamic. You must maintain stability even as you introduce uncertainty. If you create confusion but offer no steady presence, you undermine yourself. The power of induced uncertainty depends on your calmness. When you remain steady while others grow unsure, the contrast magnifies your authority. There is a deeper reason uncertainty is such a powerful force. People fear the unknown far more than they fear what is visible. A clear threat can be managed. A clear disagreement can be addressed, but an unclear intention, an unclear reaction, an unclear position, these force the mind into constant analysis. The mind exhausts itself, searching for answers that are not immediately available. While they expend energy trying to interpret you conserve yours. They scatter their focus, you sharpen yours. Induced uncertainty also has the effect of slowing down impulsive behavior. When someone is rushing, pushing, or pressuring, injecting even a hint of uncertainty can deflate the momentum. A well-placed pause, a thoughtful silence, or a measured question breaks their surge. They can no longer rely on emotional force. They must now think, and thinking, for the emotionally reactive, is uncomfortable. Their aggression softens into hesitation. In leadership, induced uncertainty is used to encourage thoughtful action. When people assume they have all the answers, they become reckless or arrogant. A leader who introduces a small dose of doubt encourages deeper analysis without discouraging initiative. The uncertainty becomes a tool for refinement rather than resistance. In negotiation, induced uncertainty prevents the other party from becoming too confident in their position. If they believe they hold all the leverage, they will press harder. But if they sense there are variables they have not considered, they become more flexible. They begin adjusting their approach, often softening their demands without realizing they are doing so. The key to using this weapon effectively is subtlety. You are not trying to destabilize others emotionally. You are trying to regulate their certainty so they cannot overpower you with assumptions or momentum. The goal is clarity through careful disruption, not chaos. To master this skill, you must understand your own patterns of certainty. If you are too quick to respond, too eager to clarify, too willing to reassure, you eliminate the natural space where uncertainty could work in your favor. You must become comfortable with pauses, with ambiguity, with letting others speak into the silence. You must learn to observe instead of rushing to correct or explain. Induced uncertainty is not aggression. It is restraint. It is the discipline to let the other person reveal themselves before you reveal anything meaningful about yourself. It is the art of guiding interactions without announcing your direction. And its power lies in something simple. Most people cannot tolerate uncertainty for long, but if you can remain composed while their certainty dissolves, you gain the advantage without ever lifting your voice or raising your hand. 5. The weapon of emotional detachment. Emotional detachment is one of the strongest psychological advantages a person can possess. Yet it is one of the rarest. Most people live at the mercy of their emotions. Anger, excitement, fear, impatience, approval-seeking. These emotions guide their reactions, distort their thinking, and expose their internal state to anyone perceptive enough to watch. A person who cannot regulate their emotions cannot regulate their decisions. And a person who cannot regulate their decisions cannot regulate their life. Emotional detachment is not coldness, nor is it indifference. It does not mean you lack feeling. Instead, it means you refuse to let your immediate emotional impulses dictate your behavior. It means you observe your emotions rather than obey them. You decide your next move based on strategy, not sensation. You choose clarity over impulse. This discipline transforms the way others perceive you and the way you navigate the world. One of the first effects of emotional detachment is the creation of internal stability. When people cannot provoke you easily, when their comments or behaviors fail to shake your composure, they lose influence over you. Many individuals often unknowingly test emotional boundaries. They push, they prod, they provoke, not always from malice, but from habit. They act out of their own insecurities and look for reactions that affirm their control, superiority, or understanding of you. When you respond emotionally, you confirm their expectations. When you remain steady, you disrupt them. Emotional detachment grants you the ability to separate the situation from the emotion attached to it. Most people fuse the two. If an interaction feels insulting, they assume it is insulting. If they feel rejected, they believe someone actually rejected them. But feelings are not always accurate reflections of reality. They are internal weather patterns, temporary, shifting, and influenced by countless unseen factors. Detachment lets you examine the situation itself without being blinded by the storm inside you. This creates a tremendous tactical advantage because clarity is rare in emotionally charged environments. While others escalate, react, defend, or attack, you remain grounded. You see the motivations behind words rather than being distracted by their surface. You see the structure of the conversation instead of the noise. You see opportunities where others see threats. This ability to remain clear when others lose themselves makes you appear composed, authoritative, and trustworthy even to those who disagree with you. Another powerful effect of emotional detachment is the control of pace. People who react quickly often regret quickly. Emotional responses are immediate. Strategic responses are deliberate. When you detach from the emotional trigger, you refuse to move at someone else's speed. You slow the moment down. Your pause forces the other person to confront their own words, their own tone, their own intensity. Many conflicts lose momentum simply because one person refuses to match the emotional escalation. Emotional detachment acts as a brake. The entire exchange recalibrates around your steadiness. This does not mean you suppress emotions until they collapse internally. It means you acknowledge them without letting them lead. Detachment allows you to feel emotions fully while acting independently of them. You experience frustration without expressing it destructively. You notice irritation without letting it shape your decisions. You feel disappointment without turning it into self-punishment. You take responsibility for your emotional landscape rather than outsourcing that responsibility to others. Emotional detachment also strengthens your ability to influence. People are naturally drawn to those whose emotional state does not fluctuate wildly. They sense consistency, reliability, and maturity. They feel safer, even if they cannot articulate why. When you remain steady, others subconsciously calibrate themselves to your energy. They speak more carefully. They listen more closely. They weigh their responses. This is not dominance in an aggressive sense. It is influence through stability. The stable presence becomes the center of gravity in any room. Another dimension of emotional detachment is its ability to reveal hidden truths about others. When you do not react emotionally, you create space for the other person's emotions to reveal themselves. Their anger, insecurity, or impatience becomes more visible because it is not mirrored back at them. The contrast exposes who is truly in control of themselves and who is not. You learn more about people in 5 minutes of calm observation than in hours of emotional exchange. Their tone, their pacing, their defensive habits, their confidence, all become clearer when you are not competing with your own emotions. This weapon also protects your long-term well-being. Emotional overengagement drains energy and clouds judgment. When you detach, you conserve emotional resources. You learn to separate your self-worth from external circumstances. You refuse to internalize temporary conflicts as personal failures. You stop letting others dictate your mood or identity. Detachment does not numb you, it frees you. It allows you to invest your emotional energy into people and situations that actually deserve it rather than scattering it in every direction. The challenge of emotional detachment is not in embracing calm moments, but in maintaining clarity during chaotic ones. Anyone can appear composed when everything is going well. True detachment appears when you are pressured, criticized, misunderstood, or provoked. In those moments, your impulse will be to react, to defend yourself, to retaliate, to prove something. But detachment requires discipline, the discipline to pause, breathe, and evaluate. To choose the response that serves your long-term position rather than satisfying a temporary emotion. This discipline grows with practice. Each time you resist the pull of emotional reaction, you strengthen your internal authority. Each time you choose clarity over impulse, you reinforce the identity of someone who cannot be easily shaken. Eventually, this becomes your default state. Not cold, not distant, controlled. People respect those who control themselves. They trust them. They follow them. Emotional detachment creates a presence that feels larger than the moment, a presence defined by certainty, not volatility. The emotionally reactive are pulled by the world. The emotionally detached guide it. 6. The weapon of reflection and mirroring. Human beings are drawn to familiarity. Whether they admit it or not, people trust, like, and open up to those who seem similar to them. Not identical, similar. The mind instinctively relaxes around what feels familiar because it interprets similarity as safety. This is why reflection and mirroring are such powerful tools in the psychology of influence. They allow you to shape perception without force, to enter someone's emotional world without knocking down doors, and to create connection without announcing your intention to do so. Mirroring is not mimicry. Mimicry is amateurish, obvious, and insulting. People notice when someone is copying them directly. It feels artificial. Real mirroring is subtle. It is the careful reflection of someone's patterns, tones, rhythms, emotional pacing, gestures, phrasing, and attitude. It is alignment rather than imitation. When done correctly, people experience a strange but comforting feeling. I don't know why, but I feel understood by this person. They sense that you are on their wavelength, not because you are identical to them, but because you meet them where they are. Most individuals are unaware of the signals they send out every moment. Their posture reveals their comfort level. Their tone reveals their confidence or hesitation. Their choice of words reveals their worldview. Their speaking tempo reveals their emotional intensity. A person who wants to influence effectively studies these signals and then reflects them subtly. Why does this work? Because people are not reacting to you, they are reacting to themselves, reflected through you. When someone feels their own emotional energy mirrored back, they interpret it as compatibility. They interpret compatibility as connection. They interpret connection as trust. And trust opens doors that no amount of force can pry open. The first layer of mirroring is physical. Notice how someone holds themselves. Do they sit forward with intense energy? Or do they lean back with calm detachment? Do they gesture widely or keep their hands still? Do they keep steady eye contact or look away thoughtfully? When you reflect a small portion of their physical pattern, the interaction becomes smoother. They subconsciously label you as someone who gets them, even though you have not said a word about understanding them. But physical mirroring is only the beginning. The deeper layer of reflection is verbal and emotional. This is where mirroring becomes a true psychological weapon, not in a harmful sense, but in the sense of granting you extraordinary insight and influence. A person's language reveals how they interpret the world. If they use emotional words, mirror emotional phrasing. If they speak logically and directly, respond with structure and clarity. If they speak with metaphor, respond in metaphor. If they speak slowly and thoughtfully, adjust your rhythm. When your communication aligns with theirs, it signals resonance. People open up more when they feel that someone speaks their internal language. Emotional mirroring goes even deeper. People often struggle to articulate their feelings clearly. They express fragments of emotion rather than the full truth. When you reflect their emotional tone, not mimic it, but acknowledge and match its depth, you create a rare experience for them. The experience of feeling seen. Someone who feels seen becomes more honest, more expressive, and more cooperative. For example, if someone speaks with frustration beneath their words, you do not mirror the frustration itself, but the weight of their concern. If someone speaks with excitement, you mirror the energy without becoming exaggerated. You align with their emotional intention, not their emotional chaos. This form of mirroring stabilizes interactions because people feel emotionally accompanied rather than emotionally opposed. There is another powerful dimension to mirroring. It allows you to gather information effortlessly. People reveal more to those who feel familiar to them. They explain themselves more fully. They speak more freely. They offer insights you would never receive if you confronted them with resistance. Mirroring does not pressure them, it relaxes them. A relaxed mind reveals itself generously. Mirroring also helps you avoid unnecessary conflict. Many disagreements escalate not because of the subject, but because of clashing emotional rhythms. When you mirror someone's pace and tone, even slightly, you prevent misalignment. Instead of adding friction, you absorb tension and redirect it. Interactions become smoother because people feel you are engaging with them rather than pushing against them. There is a strategic advantage as well. People rarely scrutinize those they feel aligned with. When someone views you as similar, they lower their defenses. They interpret your presence as cooperative rather than competitive. They share more than they intend because it feels natural to share. They consult you without realizing they are doing so because your presence feels like an extension of their internal dialogue. This does not mean you lose yourself in others. Controlled mirroring requires strong self-awareness. You must know where your identity ends and your strategic adjustments begin. You are not becoming them. You are entering their frame long enough to understand it and guide the interaction from within. It is the difference between visiting a foreign country and renouncing your citizenship. You adapt without losing yourself. The most advanced form of mirroring is reflective articulation, putting into clear words the emotions or thoughts someone is struggling to express. When you articulate their feelings better than they can, something profound happens. They feel understood at a level they have rarely experienced. Understanding creates loyalty. Loyalty creates influence. Influence creates opportunity. However, this weapon must be used responsibly. Too much mirroring too quickly feels unnatural and forced. The power of mirroring lies in its subtlety. A small shift in posture, a slight adjustment in tone, a gentle alignment of pacing. The moment it becomes obvious, it loses effectiveness. To master reflection and mirroring, you must practice observation. Most people enter conversations focused on themselves, what they want to say, what they want to prove, how they want to be perceived. A strategic mind enters conversations to observe. What is this person's rhythm? How do they structure their thoughts? What emotional world are they operating from? What do they fear? What do they value? Mirroring gives you a direct pathway into these answers because people reveal themselves most fully to those who reflect them. Mirroring is not about manipulation. It is about understanding. It is about aligning rather than forcing. It is about building bridges that allow influence to move naturally rather than aggressively. When others feel resonance with you, they stop resisting, they stop guarding. And in that moment of lowered defenses, deeper truth and stronger connection emerge not through power, but through psychological harmony. A person who masters mirroring becomes a quiet force. Not loud, not demanding, not imposing, but undeniably influential. They create comfort without weakness, connection without vulnerability, and trust without pleading for it. At its core, mirroring is the art of making others feel at home in your presence. And in a world where most people feel misunderstood, the one who provides that feeling becomes unforgettable. 7. The weapon of disproportionate calm. Calmness is often dismissed as a personality trait, but in reality, it is a form of power. Not the gentle, passive kind people speak about when encouraging patience, but a deeper, more commanding form of calm that unsettles those who rely on emotional chaos to dominate conversations, control narratives, or pressure others into quick decisions. This calm is not natural, it is engineered. It is a psychological stance that communicates strength without raising a voice, and authority without displaying aggression. When used deliberately, it becomes one of the most destabilizing forces in human interaction. Disproportionate calm means staying composed in moments where others expect or even need you to be emotional. People often push, provoke, or escalate because they assume you will react in predictable ways. They rely on emotional momentum. If they raise their voice, you will raise yours. If they show frustration, you will mirror it. But when you remain steady, when you meet intensity with stillness, their emotional momentum collapses. They are forced to confront the imbalance between your stability and their agitation. This imbalance creates a psychological mirror. Your calm magnifies their lack of calm. Your steadiness highlights their instability. You do not have to call out their behavior. Your presence does it for you. Most people underestimate how much they reveal in heated moments. Anger, impatience, insecurity, fear of losing control all become visible when emotions run high. Those who rely on emotional dominance expect others to get swept into the same storm. But when you remain calm, you refuse to enter the storm. You anchor the environment while they expend their energy. This is why disproportionate calm is so effective. It exposes the emotional dependence of others. They expect your reaction to validate their intensity. Without it, they become unsure of themselves. Their certainty dissolves. They question their own words. They begin adjusting, softening, or explaining, simply because your calm forces them to reevaluate their approach. Calmness also reclaims control of the pace. Emotional people speak fast. They argue fast. They pressure fast. Their pace is a tool speed prevents clarity, but calmness slows everything down. It creates space between their words and your response. It forces the conversation onto your terms. The moment you slow the pace, their emotional advantage disappears. You create a rhythm that suits you, not them. Disproportionate calm does not mean you ignore reality or suppress emotion. It means you choose when emotion is appropriate. You do not allow your internal landscape to be hijacked by someone else's intensity. You do not allow external pressure to dictate your internal state. You become the regulator of the interaction, not the reactor. This form of calm is especially powerful in conflict. When someone confronts you with hostility, a raised voice, an accusation, a challenge, they expect one of two reactions: collapse or aggression. Collapse gives them dominance. Aggression gives them justification. But calmness gives them nothing. It interrupts the script they rehearsed in their mind. They don't know how to proceed because their strategy depended on you reacting. Without your reaction, they lose direction. Your calm shifts the psychological burden back onto them. They must confront the intensity they created. They begin sensing the disproportion. They question whether their reaction was warranted. They wonder what you know that they don't. Calmness introduces doubt, not in yourself, but in the other person's emotional certainty. This does not mean you should use calmness to belittle or shame others. It means you understand the strategic value of emotional neutrality. You understand that you cannot think clearly when your emotions dominate you. You understand that in any exchange, professional or personal, the one who remains centered gains insight that the emotional person cannot access. Another function of disproportionate calm is that it creates a reputation. People begin to associate you with steadiness. They trust you in moments of uncertainty because you do not escalate situations unnecessarily. They respect you because you do not lose yourself in impulsivity. They confide in you because they know you will not respond with volatility. This reputation becomes part of your influence, not by demanding power, but by embodying stability consistently. There is also an internal advantage. Calmness strengthens your long-term decision-making. When you detach from immediate emotional reactions, you see patterns others overlook. You recognize the motives behind people's words, not just the words themselves. You understand dynamics rather than becoming trapped in emotional fragments. Calmness gives you a clear vantage point, and clarity is a higher form of power than volume ever could be. But disproportionate calm requires practice. It requires awareness of your triggers. It requires discipline to pause before reacting. It requires the humility to recognize that not every situation deserves your emotional energy. It requires the strength to endure someone else's intensity without feeling compelled to match it. You must also learn the difference between calmness and passivity. Calmness is active control. Passivity is surrender. Calmness observes first. Passivity ignores. Calmness chooses response. Passivity avoids responsibility. Calmness engages with clarity. Passivity disengages with indifference. The power of calm comes from awareness, not withdrawal. The final advantage of disproportionate calm is its ability to influence without force. People naturally align themselves with the most stable emotional presence in a room. When someone remains calm in uncertainty, others look to them for cues. Their posture becomes the anchor. Their tone becomes the default. Their energy becomes the center of gravity. Calmness becomes leadership not through command, but through consistency. In a world where most people live as emotional weather vanes, constantly changing direction depending on the winds around them, disproportionate calm becomes a rare and unmistakable power. It is the quiet strength that outlasts noise, the steady presence that outmaneuvers chaos, and the psychological advantage that requires no aggression. The reactive person burns out, the detached person endures, but the calm person leads. Power is never owned. It is negotiated in every interaction, every exchange, every moment where two minds meet. Most people lose these negotiations long before they realize a negotiation has even begun. They walk into conversations unguarded. They reveal their intentions without being asked. They react without thinking, expose their insecurities without noticing, and allow their emotions to steer their judgment. In doing so, they hand over control bit by bit, unaware of the psychological terrain beneath their feet. But you are no longer operating from that place. You have learned that the battlefield is not physical, it is perceptual. The strongest influence is rarely loud or forceful. It is subtle, stable, and invisible to those who never learn to see it. Silence, unpredictability, selective vulnerability, induced uncertainty, emotional detachment, mirroring, and calmness. These are not tricks, they are disciplines. They are methods of understanding yourself so deeply that others cannot easily shake you, and understanding others so thoroughly that they reveal far more than you do. The goal is not domination for its own sake, nor victory measured by the defeat of others. The goal is self-mastery, the kind that allows you to walk into any situation with clarity rather than confusion, presence rather than reaction, and strategy rather than impulse. Most people live at the mercy of their habits. They speak too quickly, trust too easily, anger too fast, retreat too soon, and reveal too much. But you now see the structure behind these behaviors. You understand that influence does not come from overpowering others. It comes from understanding the architecture of human psychology. When you know how people think, you know how they act. When you know how they act, you know how to position yourself. And when you know how to position yourself, you no longer compete on the same level as those who rely on impulse and emotion. These lessons are not meant to turn you into a manipulator, nor into someone who hides behind masks. They are meant to elevate your awareness, to make you conscious of dynamics others sleepwalk through, to make you intentional where others are accidental, to make you steady where others crumble. The real advantage doesn't come from controlling others, it comes from not being controlled by them. Silence becomes a shield. Unpredictability becomes a boundary. Vulnerability becomes a tool. Uncertainty becomes a space. Detachment becomes clarity. Mirroring becomes understanding. Calmness becomes authority. And together, they form a way of moving through the world that makes you difficult to read, difficult to provoke, and difficult to overthrow. People cannot play you when they cannot predict you. They cannot weaken you when you do not hand them emotional leverage. They cannot outrun you when you control the pace. They cannot outthink you when you observe more deeply than they speak. You are no longer one of the many who wander blindly through social terrain. You are one of the few who see the contours of the landscape, the subtle shifts in tone, posture, intention, and energy that dictate how interactions unfold. You navigate with purpose. You choose your responses. You decide what is revealed and what is withheld. You operate from strength even in moments that appear uncertain. And this is why you will not merely survive the games others play, you will outgrow them entirely. Real power is quiet. Real influence is subtle. Real mastery is invisible. Those who rely on noise burn out. Those who rely on force encounter resistance. But those who rely on psychological clarity shape outcomes before others recognize a decision has been made. Walk forward with that clarity. Use it not to crush others, but to elevate yourself above the chaos they create. Power belongs to the one who understands the game, not the one who announces his intention to win it. You now understand the game.